What we're trying to map is how someone goes from a stranger of your brand all the way through to being a super fan or an ambassador of your brand. And what happens a lot of times is that we think it's just like the know, like, trust cycle. So people know about you, then they like you, and then they trust you, and then they pay you money, and then the end. But there's a lot more intricacies in that, I think, especially with service-based businesses.
Kiss my aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship. Kiss my
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to be walking you through an exercise we've now done with 2 different clients and found it to be extremely freaking helpful. This is maybe something that comes about in the brand discovery process, but until you can really map it out, does it start to crystallize? And I think in this episode, you might walk away with some takeaways to think about how this functions in your business or how you could run this kind of experiment with your clients, with your partners, with anybody else who is kind of got their hands in your business cookie jar, and to really kind of get on the same page of that customer map. So there's a lot of different ways you could call this exercise. For me, I've been calling it like a client or customer touchpoint map. So what I want to talk about today is explicit to service-based businesses, not necessarily product-based businesses, although you could apply some similar logic. And the examples I want to use are 2 from our portfolio. So we have Galavant Society as one example, and then we have Bloom RDH as the second example. And I'm going to kind of just like walk you through, without giving away like all the nitty-gritty of their business, how we've dictated the difference in opportunities to not only like reaffirm the branding, but to connect to that person throughout each journey of their process. So the first thing we start with is all the way, if we're considering this like a line, right? So the way that I do this with clients is I'll open up a whiteboard file in their Canva account, which is basically a limitless canvas. And the idea is to really kind of like word map and break off and find places to add in details and expand upon this resource as it goes on. So we'll start and kind of like picture a line. It goes from left to right, and it's going from stranger all the way to super fan. Obviously, there are going to be different touch points in between that, and that's what we're here to map out. So first, we're thinking about someone who's never heard of you before and doesn't know what you do and doesn't know anything about you. That's the stranger. That is what we would call like a cold lead. Not even a lead. That's just a cold audience. That's someone who knows nothing. How do they then become aware of you? How do they start warming up as a lead? And for Galavant Society, which I'd like to use as this first example as a refresher, Galavant Society hosts group trips for women around the world, and they are luxury and fabulous and maximalist and over the top. And then they also do private travel planning. But for the sake of this episode, we're really just kind of walking through that group travel type experience. So first exposure to the brand, going from cold to a warm lead, would be maybe that they heard about it on social media or they heard from a friend. So this is their social or referral intrigue, right? They're like, oh, interesting. Send me the link. I want to see, blah, blah, blah. So maybe they are popping to the website. They're consuming some of the content. This is where the branding needs to be really strong. So the brand has to come across the mission, the vision, the ideal client. They need to see themselves in this brand. They need to really feel like, okay, like, yeah, this feels like it's for me, or nope, this is not for me, I'm out. So your first kind of step or your base of your funnel, you could say, is that cold lead that like is into warm lead. They're interested. They need their 17 different exposures to make an action, but they're paying attention. Then let's say one step beyond that is they're opting into the email newsletter. So they saw on social or website, maybe their friend told them about it. They are generally within the Galavant Society sphere, and they're watching and paying attention when trips go live. Then they're on the newsletter, and the newsletter is what allows them to get trip info, updates, and input on wherever you want to go. So what we've decided is to use branding to our advantage in labeling what these different levels mean. So again, think of Galavant Society's business model. They're leading super, super niche luxury trips around the world during the whole year, but there are a limited number of spots and the spots sell out. So you have to have a very, very wide funnel of warm leads that then filters down and filters down and filters down to those very select trips. So, keeping that in mind, we needed to figure out how do we bring people into this universe? And Galavant Society, as a name, already has this kind of membership type quality. So, we really tried to find a way to make it feel special to become a member. One of the first pieces of feedback that she got when she started posting about Galavant Society on social media was, how do I become a member? How do I join? How do I join? And so instead of gatekeeping membership at like a higher level of this client touchpoint map, we just decided to call anyone who's on the newsletter a member. So you're like, hey, actually, to be a member of Galavant Society is free. You just have to subscribe to the email newsletter. That's the only thing. It is totally free to join. Just subscribe to the email newsletter, because then it already like plants in their head the idea that they're like belonging to something, and that it doesn't really take a lot to become a member, right? Oh, you want to be a member? Great. It's actually free and you can join the email list. So the email list is how she gets signups for her trips. So by elevating step literally 2 of the client touchpoint map, we've created already a sense of accomplishment or a sense of aspiration that you've joined something in just that one of those very early steps of the client touchpoint map. And especially for like a community-based, service-based business, I think that part is really important. So that was something that we came to in this client touchpoint map exercise that was like an aha moment. So the member, literally being a member of Galavant Society, is just joining the newsletter. And we talked about that maybe even eventually evolving into some kind of like yearly fee. Like it could be that you pay, your membership, your base membership is $150 a year or $100 a year. And when you are paying to be a member, you get access to maybe discounts on swags or bonuses for private travel booking or other perks that are like low level perks, but that there's this baseline membership that you have to be a member in order to then, advance to the next level. So the general public and the trip launch public is coming through. Someone's a stranger, then they are following on social, or they have an awareness of the brand. Then their first action of becoming a member is joining the email newsletter. Now, let's say they've joined the email newsletter and they are progressing through this business. They are then getting into their trip specific, pre-registered, vetted, approved category, which we're calling like becoming a gal. So you have a member, and then you're a gal, and then once you're a gal, then you're a VIG, very important gal, for Galavant Society. So to become a gal means that you have to have pre-registered for a trip. You have to be on their interest list and fill out their interest form. So these are the intake process that they use to really like make sure that someone who wants to join the trip like is a good fit. And then there's a lot of steps that happen in between. There's like trip applications and interviews and everything like this. And once they've officially booked a trip, they go from member to gal. So they're a member of Galavant Society and now they're a gal of Galavant Society. So having just that like little step up, that extra rung in between, gives again something to aspire to, something to work towards. It's an incentive, right? To like kind of like climb in the ranks of this funnel of this business. And then there's a lot of things that are happening between them being approved for a trip and actually going on a trip. So we talked about all the different touch points that have to happen from, okay, I'm booked versus before they even have the experience that they're paying for. So a lot of what we talked about is how to figure out which information needed to be segmented to different spots in the client experience. So once they're signed on for a trip, then they're getting all of these branded documents, they're getting print mail, they're getting emails, they're getting a web page that's password protected, they're getting access to their travel app, they're getting their roommates, their FAQs, their visa information. There's so much stuff that has to happen. And so to really make the most out of that part of the experience, there are lots of places that we could inject the branding. So the first thing that we did is we looked at her old process, which was sending a huge, like 80 plus page document to someone before a trip. And as someone who like tries to not have like any papers at all ever in my house or in my possession, I was like, can we think about maybe doing this digitally and like saving the paper and saving you on postage? And she's like, yeah, let's find a new way to do it. So instead we segmented out from that huge document, okay, what information can live on a website, a blog, or a web page that's specific to the trip? which ones have opportunity for revenue from affiliate income, because that's really important that that lives online. And then what's the stuff that is information that is needed to know, but could be delivered in a different way. So can we deliver it in like a beautiful print magazine, for example? So what was so fun about working on all of this, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, is I'm going on the trip to India this year and I'm so excited because I kind of helped re-engineer this whole touch point experience situation. So what we decided on for Allie was there's different times before and after the trip that different assets need to be delivered to the client. So 120 days out, 90 days out, 60 days out, 30 days out, and before the trip, 14 days out, so 2 weeks beforehand. And so what we did in this client touchpoint map is take all of that onboarding information, all of that trip information, and like lay it into a matrix of sorts where we had like the day that it needed to be delivered across the top. And then on down the side, we are dictating whether it's a digital document, so like a something that gets emailed, like an emailed PDF, whether it's printed and mailed. So that would be like swag, welcome cards, luggage tags, stickers, goodies, miscellaneous, and this print magazine that we're working on. Whether it needed to be on a web page that was password protected for just the people on the trip, whether it lived on their travel app, or whether it lived as a public facing blog or guide. So just mapping out all that information and segmenting it to live in the right spot was so helpful for the evolution of all that information. And again, it's places to affirm the branding. Good branding is going to feel consistent from print to digital to merch to social, etc. So what we're trying to do in this client touchpoint map is figure out what logically should live where. What does it look like? And how does it serve the client the best? How does it serve the customer the best to really ensure that everything is supposed to live where it's supposed to live? So, what we've covered so far, again, someone who starts as a stranger, then they maybe find out on social media or as a referral from a friend, they're joining the newsletter. Them joining the newsletter is what gives them the moniker of being a member. Then once they decided, yep, I really would like to go on a trip and they've been approved, they become a gal. And between them becoming a gal of Galavant Society and becoming someone on a trip, like physically on a trip, there's so many things that need to be handed off. And you can really apply this to any service-based business. Let's say you're an interior designer. Between someone signing a contract and you breaking ground on their construction, what are all those assets, all those what to expect documents, all those deliverables, FAQs, et cetera, to make sure that you're covering all your bases. So this is where client touchpoint map is going to be really useful. Then we break it down into their actual trip. So this is where they would get other like branded swag, extra documents, maybe it's like itinerary at a glance, etc. Those are also like moments where you can inject the branding and really make sure that there's a brand consistency, brand touch point happening in the actual experience of the thing. And then beyond that, we have an ambassador level, which for the time being, we've left a bit blank because we're still fleshing out what that could look like. But that's where it would be this aspirational distinction, right? Like you go from being not knowing about the brand at all to becoming a member to going on a trip, becoming a gal to then there's this kind of threshold of like, what does it mean to be a very important gal? What does it mean to be someone who's like earned status, for lack of a better term? Like if you think about airlines or hotels, et cetera, credit cards, for example, that gives them benefits. What are those extra perks at that next level? So this is what we're kind of calling like VIG, very important gal. Maybe it's that you have early access to trip bookings, or you get to have input on the locations for the following year, or you get priority roommate assignments, or whatever that looks like. And then your top tier would be your ambassador. And that is reserved for people who've gone on like 3 trips or more. Maybe they get an opportunity to co-host, or they get a chance to dictate an entire day, or they get maybe like a revenue share opportunity, honestly. So again, what we did in this client touchpoint map is really figure out how someone goes from being an absolute stranger of the brand all the way through to that top level. And having this visibility from like a marketing strategy standpoint and a branding standpoint is huge because it gives us the language of how to explain how the business works to people. And this helps with the verbiage for the website, for example. Like, okay, this is how to join. Literally join the newsletter. How to become a gal. Make sure you go on one trip. How to become a very important gal. You've gone on 3 or more trips within 2 calendar years, and then start to lay out those perks, just like you would see on like an airline or a hotel or credit card company, right? So that's kind of client touchpoint map for Galavant Society. Hey KMA, as you're building your business, you're also building your community, but you might be feeling like all the tools that you need to do so are starting to weigh you down. You've got your website and socials, maybe also an app for video hosting, a calendar tool for events, a payment processor, a community hub, a chat app, and an email newsletter, and yet you still don't feel like you can talk to all of your people at once. Social media algorithms are hiding your carefully crafted post, and the rise of AI slop is turning people off of these online communities the very moment that we need them the most. It's getting harder and harder to know if you're connecting with a real human being, and none of these apps are really making your business run smoother and actually letting people talk to each other. Your community feels fragmented and you're losing your marbles constantly switching tabs. This is a death by 1,000 paper cuts. However, Heartbeat presents a solution. Heartbeat is an all-in-one community hosting platform that brings your chats, your courses, live events, and payments under one single roof, letting you own your data and your revenue without the technical headache so you can host the community that you've always dreamed of. Stop managing software and start leading people. Ready to build your own community hub? You can head over to heartbeat.chat/KMA to start your free trial. No credit card required. And when you're ready to level up like we did, you can use the code KMA30 for 30% off. Because you're a listener of the pod, I'd also like to personally invite you to join our community. Go ahead and head over to app.heartbeat.chat/KMA, or you can visit mkwcreative.co/KMA, which will take you on a redirect link to the group, which will be linked in today's show notes. Cheers, and we'll see you in there. Now, I want to show what that looks like differently for Kim, Bloom RDH, because Kim is actually an educator. And so her brand is going to be different in that she's got a different approach to her client touchpoints and what her mission is. So my goal is to really be able to contrast those two things for you guys. So next, let's talk about Bloom RDH. If you're not familiar with Bloom RDH, go back, listen to Kim's episode. Kim is a dental hygienist educator, former and current hygienist educator in like actual clinic, but also she has a brand called Bloom RDH, which is specifically catered to the new grad hygienist who is entering the professional workforce for the first time. So what we are catering to is really like helping them bridge the gap between their school experience and their professional experience. Kim has loads of resources like downloadables and on-demand sessions and accountability groups and all of these different really great assets for people to use. And what we're trying to do in the touchpoint map is figure out, okay, what does the next chapter of this look like? How do we make sure that we are putting our time, attention, and effort into the opportunities that are really giving her the most bang for her buck on the time spent? Because as you can imagine, like mentorship and education are two very time intensive offers, right? Dissimilar to Galavant Society, in which Allie's hosting the trip, those 10 people are having the same experience, but it's not like she's taking each person on an individual trip, right? So what we're thinking about with this client touchpoint map for Bloom RDH is that she has a few different branches of her business. So one of the things that we talked about is the difference between her making money with students as the customer versus brands as the customer. So in the rest of this, I'd like to really explain what that looks like. So first and foremost, let's think of her students. The students are, let's say they have not ever heard of her before. They are absolute strangers. They are cold. How they go from a cold lead to a warm lead is that they get exposed to the brand Bloom RDH in one of these three ways. The first would be through Kim's public speaking. The second would be they get exposure to her from their school. And then the last one would be her social media presence, her brand presence in general. And what I did with Kim in this is really had her break down what percentage of that audience is finding you from each of these three things. That's another really great way you can attack a client touchpoint map, is figuring out where is your exertion versus the return on your time. So how much percentage wise of your students are coming to you from speaking versus school versus social media? And she said 70% are coming from her speaking, 15% are coming from the schools, and 15% are coming from the social media. So that, to make up 100%, is what's leading into the awareness of the brand of Bloom RDH and of Kim. So once they are aware of her, Then they're hopefully graduating and they're becoming a new grad. And then we have to kind of push them into different areas of the business based on what they need. So what she's got so far is she has one-on-one offers. She has the downloadables, like help yourself, like get it anytime you want on demand style resources. So a guide, some video trainings, etc. And then she also has a group program. And the group program is where she wants to start to spend a lot of time because when we think about the demographic of students, right? If you think of one student graduating, coming into their job, and then moving on, the lifespan of that customer is maybe 3 to 5 years. And then the thing about them being students is there's always going to be the next class and the next class and the next class and the next class. Also, knowing that they're students, we know that they probably don't have a bajillion dollars to spend on Kim. Like, it doesn't matter if Kim's the best of the best. She is going to hit a cap at the actual, like, per customer income, like revenue she can get from these students, right? So what we did in this section is really break down, okay, the customer went from being a stranger to knowing about you. Now they know about you. Now they're primed to get the most benefit from what it is that you do or offer under these three categories: group, downloads, and one-on-ones. Let's break that down by exertion in return. So she says 25% of her income and her exertion is going towards the one-on-one, 25% is going towards downloads, and 50% of that is coming from her group offer. Now, we also kind of broke down in this what is the time versus revenue spend of this. So one-on-one takes a lot of time, but it also could be high revenue, right? You're offering really great services to, you're affecting one person, it's at a premium, etc. That being said, it takes a lot of time to acquire that right fit person that has the time, the energy, the funds, etc. So that's a tough category because it takes a lot of time, but there's the potential to make a good amount of money. However, on the downloads, the like help yourself resources, like go buy them anytime you want on the website, takes some time and it makes some money. So it's like maybe less time spent and less income potential because resources are priced between like $17 up to $50, $60. But the best part about the downloads is that she has the opportunity to make money on the same thing many, 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 many times, right? So many people can download the New Grad Survival Guide. Many people can go purchase the webinar, and that becomes revenue that just keeps recurring. That said, it's not a ton of money unless we're pushing it like crazy. So that's kind of where the passive income argument breaks down. Is, of course, everyone loves passive income. Make it once, make money on it 100 times. But the actual system that it takes to maintain the interest and the intrigue and the awareness of your passive offers is a job in itself. And I think a lot of our culture forgets that. Anyway, the last kind of chunk that she was talking about of like offers for new grads is her group program. So her group program is, it takes a decent amount of time, but it has the opportunity for the most return on that time because serving 5 people is very similar to her serving 50 or 500 people. So the time spent doesn't fluctuate all that much because the group program value is in the actual community aspect and not so much about Kim's like original education or one-on-one attention. It's more everyone's learning the same material at the same time and she's making money on everybody equally, right? So from that, we broke out like, okay, let's say we really want to deep dive on this group offer and like build out something that feels substantial. So a lot of what we talked about was the difference between mentorship and membership and what that could look like to build out a membership model for Bloom RDH. Right now, she kind of has just like on the brand side of things, she has like a constant like education series, which she does like is hosting, is like a community host in a sense, but she doesn't per se have the membership, like this is our corner of the internet that if you fit this demographic, you want to be in this group because it's insanely valuable. And then also to have her mentorship, but to have her mentorship in a broader sense of like her leading a large group instead of just focusing on one-on-ones or instead of just focusing on her small group education. So what we talked about is, okay, let's brainstorm how we can add value to this membership. So the online group being the first thing, the resource library being another thing, having events and having a sense of community for people to ask questions, FAQs, hey, I'm stuck, hey, I need your help, blah, blah, blah. The social learning aspect being very valuable. And then we talked about some fun concepts that are specific, I think, pretty much to Kim, which is encouraging intra-community mentorships in a way that like a sorority would have bigs and littles. So let's say someone who has worked with Kim for 3 years then helps to mentor someone who's just been there for 1 year. So finding those ways to not only host the community, but to give them sense of purpose of like being able to help the person who is them from 2 years ago. And we do this with our group. So we do this with Kiss My Aesthetic in that we're helping to inspire the next group of designers, that we want to bring back the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge to be able to help people get better at design work and give them feedback and have it be this like all of us helping each other together. I think Kim has a really great opportunity to do that. The next would be her like merch, swag, etc. So I always put that as kind of like an asterisk off to the side because I think people think that a product-based business is just more profitable than it is, where unless you're going to do print on demand, which is very, very hands off, getting products, getting them shipped to your house and then distributing them out like is a whole other business model that I don't think people know all that's involved. But that said, if she really built up this community and built up this group, giving them those little perks of like maybe discounts on merch or a custom design t-shirt for the year or pencil case or whatever, pins, stickers, etc., is a fun way to kind of show camaraderie amongst the group. So those were just kind of our ideas for how she could take the group aspect of her business, build it to be even more valuable. And to circle back on that, build the resource library in that group to be cumulative. So the point of the group here is that somebody would pay a membership fee, let's call it 10, $15 a month. And with that fee, they would have all these perks. They would have the online group. They'd have a connection to their bigs and littles. They'd have the resource library. So she could actually load in the resources that currently live on her website and say, hey, you can buy exactly the one you want, or you can join this group. It's $10 a month. And every month I upload a new resource into that group, which means that over time, the value of that group is going to increase because there's going to be more and more resources and more things that you can just help yourself because they're all going to be hosted within that group. So if you're doing the cost benefit analysis, right? Like you're a new grad, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't spend $60 on this webinar, but I can join this group for $10 a month and then I can just use it for as long as I need it and then I can bounce. That's very valuable. The other thing we thought about is really building that resource library out as something that could be evolving with Kim and her business. So a lot of what she deals with new grads is like helping them through imposter syndrome or helping them really like build confidence in their career. And if we give them an opportunity to submit ideas for like, hey, I really could use a brush up on this topic, that topic, etc. The other thing that she's looking to revive is events. So bringing back her monthly, basically like virtual coffee meetup called Morning Bloom, which is so cute, and opening it as a forum for Q&A. Allow people to network with each other, allow for that social learning, etc. What we are envisioning for this group is actually setting Kim up also on Heartbeat. So if this is just another plug for another great platform that allows you to really customize all this. So all that coursework, all of those resources can live in their own panel, like live in their own section of that space, which is fabulous. And I think it would really give not only Kim, but like the people of her membership an opportunity to answer each other's questions and like build in their own knowledge alongside each other. So some of the things we talked about in this client touchpoint map is like how to develop like a mission, a vision, a promise, and terms and rules for this group as a business model. So we broke that out in this as well. I'm not going to go into all of that. But what we kind of left as the question mark or like the for next time is how do you then honor your alumni of that group? So again, someone's going from a stranger to then having awareness about the brand to then becoming a member in this membership. What happens when they no longer need the membership? Like, is there another space that they can go? Can they get referral perks for like referring the younger students to join? Do they get an opportunity to educate, to give back to the group that gave them so much? So that's kind of a down the road problem to solve. But the fact that we have this in a map, I think is going to be really helpful as she continues to evolve this offer. The other way we can really evolve this to be cash flow positive for Kim is to make sure that there are like different levels to aspire to, right? So what she could start this online group with is kind of like a founding membership. Maybe for the first like 50 people, they get like a lifetime free membership to the group and they get special designation on their profile of being like a founding member. After that first level, you could find ways to graduate that membership into different tiers. So then maybe like the following year's class, like class of 2027 is paying $10 a month. Class of 2028 is paying $17 a month, et cetera, et cetera. Because the value of the group is going to grow as more members join and as more resources get added to that resource library. So the second part of Kim's business model is really catering to brands. So what she's been doing so far is working with brands to put on like 6-week long series, educational series about different topics relating to the new grad audience. So similar to what we just did with the student thing, how does a brand go from having never heard of Bloom RDH all the way through to being a super fan, a sponsor, a referral partner, etc. So in this one, we broke it down that those lead sources were coming from virtual and referral, then in-person events, and then pitching and outreach. And that breakdown was about like 75, 15, 10. So 75% of the brands are coming from virtual referrals, 15% of them are coming from in-person event exposure, and 10% are coming from Kim's own pitching or outreach. All of that is what's contributing to awareness. And once they are aware of Kim and her brand, then they're getting that exposure to her in many different touch points. So social, web, email, different reviews, different speaking things, etc. Then let's say they reach out or she reaches out to engage them in work. And we broke down, okay, what are the different offers that you could have for brands? And where are your opportunities? Where's your time spend? Where's your return on that time? And where are your opportunities? So the first would be like a content contributor. So she can help contribute content for magazines, for blogs, for articles, for newsletters, social media, etc. That takes a lot of time. It has a potential to make a lot of money because it gives her a lot of opportunity and awareness for her brand. The other would be a community host. So her just hosting some type of event, meetup, matchup, giveaway, etc. That would be not so much time, but maybe there's not so much money opportunity to be had there. The third and fourth ones are where she really has the opportunity to grow and build her business, which is a one-off virtual speaking topic like a lecture, which takes some time, but it has the opportunity to really charge a lot of money because she's going to the brands or to the schools. And the last one would be a speaker series. So that takes a lot of time to pull together, but there's a high income potential because it's a long partnership over multiple weeks, right? So the ways that we can help support her from a branding perspective in those things is making sure that every time she works with a brand, she has it summarized in a case study deck. So make sure you go back and listen to like Day in My Life and Case Study as like the two pieces of content that every like brand should be making all the time, which is how you run your day and also like how you summarize something that you've done, a project start to finish. So that would be really important. And then the next one would be making sure that she has a speaker kit at the ready. So a one pager that's specific to schools, a one pager that's specific to brands, and then some kind of like menu of speaking topics that she can do quickly. So that person who's looking to hire her has all that information kind of at the ready. The last would be how Kim pitches to brands and how she could come up with different emails, maybe discovery call offers, proposals, etc., and even a print postcard that she could have with her when she goes to these in-person events that explains who she is, what she does, and how she can help them. So different from Galavant Society, in Bloom RDH Client Touchpoint Map, we really broke out what are your student opportunities and what are your brand opportunities and how you can serve those things. And the next kind of question to ask Kim is like, is that a 50-50 brand effort? Like, is it 50% of your revenue and income and effort is coming from students and 50% is coming from brands? Or what does that balance look like? And that is going to like fluctuate and shift and change with her business. But the goal would be to build really both of those parallel to each other so that she has some insulation from like environments shifting, right? If we hit a crazy recession and the brands don't have any money, she can dump more into the student side. If the students are really struggling and maybe she's not feeling as passionate about like being this host anymore, but she really wants to consult for brands, that she has kind of a framework for both and a bird's eye view and understanding of how that goes from stranger to warm lead to qualified lead all the way through to paying customer, client, student, brand, etc. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. I apologize if you had to hear me cough or hear my voice go out for a second, but I really am loving doing this with clients. So if you are someone who's like, I have no idea how I would even start to do that, I don't even know how I would map out someone from being a stranger all the way to being a super fan and ambassador of my brand. I don't really know where my income opportunities are. I don't really know where I should be spending my time or effort to get the maximum return. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Our website, mkwcreative.co/contact, would be the place to do this. And this is really something that we could cover in a strategy session. So I think 90 minutes on screen share, creating on like a whiteboard file in your Canva account so you can come back to it, change it, manipulate it as you like. Really helpful. So thanks so much for getting all the way to the end. If you liked this episode, don't forget to send it, save it, share it, post it, give it to a friend. I really could work on my outro, but it is what it is. And we'll see you next week on the podcast, either on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget, hey, maybe leave us a review. That would be nice. Catch you next time. Bye.